I'm Russell Yardley, a professional non-executive director and chairman of Tesseract, a cybersecurity company.
I'm Terry Roberts, and I'm the CEO and president of Whitehawk, formerly a vice president for cyber engineering and analytics at Task, and previously the executive director of Carnegie Mellon Software Engineering Institute. But I really have a cyber intelligence background through a 30-year career in the intelligence community with my last position as the Deputy Director of Naval Intelligence.
Terry, this is a very unfair question because you've only just arrived here in Australia. But
That's all right, throw it out there.
How do you see the comparison between Australia and the United States?
I actually think cybersecurity, cybercrime, and fraud is the great equalizer. So even if you're a very sophisticated countries like Australia and the US, we're in a really bad, equally poor position today because the majority of our directors and CEOs are 45 to 75 and they don't get this. Mm-hmm. It hurts their heads. And so they tend to just say, I'm going to do the minimal I need. If I'm regulated, right, I'm going to check a few compliance blocks. And God willing, I'm going to get to retirement without a major event. That is unacceptable. It's unacceptable. You're putting our global economy, our national economies at risk because it hurts your head. So I actually believe that we're in similar places. I know we're in similar places when it comes to talent and having the education programs that we need to have in place, the digital literacy programs that we need in our schools, and I mean grade school, middle school, high school, okay? The one-year programs and certifications that we have to have in place. I'm on several university boards to help them to create those curriculums so we can have throughput. Until we up the number of folks that we need in this space. And the nice thing is there's jobs available. We believe in the US we're 1 million short. Right. Okay, I'm sure you have a nice large number here in Australia that you're short. Yeah. So the beauty is, I think we actually share a lot of the same challenges and issues. And I know the government's partner on this. I think the industries need to partner on this too.
So I think Australia, from what I can see, is very much like the Curate's egg, where we've got the wonder of being a sophisticated but smaller mm-hmm. economy, so mm-hmm. we can see through to the end a little quicker. Mm-hmm. And so there are companies that are really right at the leading edge. But then when you look beyond those special companies, the Atlassians of the world, yes, there's a real paucity of talent. And I think that Australia has to concentrate on making sure that our average game is much better. Our top game, not bad. Right.
And remember, the other issue in this space is that geography is meaningless. Mm-hmm. So, the Chinese, the Russians, all the known major bad actors, the mafia has moved totally to this space. They don't care where you are. They just care if you have money and if your defenses are down. So again, I think this is the great equalizer across all our countries.
Well, I think, when you look at, we're trying to create, with diagnoses, for example, that I heard just the other day that in 20 years' time, most people will not be diagnosed for most of their ailments by doctors. We'll self-diagnose.
Right.
And so when you start to look at the threats of what would happen when the control of those systems, or even the marginal influence of those systems, right, can actually influence the way in which a whole society behaves. So I think that there's some potential big black swan events that mm-hmm. we need to think about and say, well, from a strategic point of view, what do we need to build into the systems to be able to respond to some of those big system attacks that I think ultimately would be inevitable?
So, part of my job is to think like a bad guy. Mm-hmm. And when I think like a bad guy, then I go that all of where we're going makes my life easy. if I want to get at you, if I want to get at your company, if I want to monetize that, if I want to disrupt that, if I want to destroy it, I have a lot of cards in my hand. We need to work with the universities and with industry and government to ensure that we have backups, to ensure that we have protection protocols, and to ensure that whatever we're developing, that there's a counterpoint to it. And really the time to start doing that is like 10 years ago. So we need to start today, because what we're doing is we're giving everything up to the power of what comes with technology, and we're not investing in those backups.
So when you look at machine learning, the ability to use statistics and mathematics to identify trends and movements, how well prepared are we for being able to look at what is going on in the world, to be able to determine that there are, malware in a system?
Absolutely. So, one of the things, if we talk in a positive way, that we can do is leveraging AI from a cyber intelligence standpoint. We shouldn't be just focused on intelligence sharing, right? Because that's just what I know and what you know. No, what we need is the next generation analytics to show the so what of that data, the connections, identify abnormalities early on, and share that systematically across our business sectors and across all of industry and government, so that we can prevent things from happening. So that is an area that I just came from the largest cybersecurity conference in the US, is called RSA conference in San Francisco. It's been going on since '94. Over 1,000 vendors there, a lot of initiatives on artificial intelligence related to cybersecurity and threat intelligence. That is a critical focus, because that can enable us to know what's out there that is a current trend, right, in crime and fraud, share it across ourselves instantaneously, and prevent events from happening. I'm normally not an alarmist in this space because I'm a problem solver, but I think the worst possible future could be where we lose trust online, trust to conduct business transactions, trust to communicate, trust to do government missions. That trust is critical. So I am to the point where I know that we have to decide what are the kinds of financial transactions, data transactions, communications that have to be protected. And I've already started thinking about, what are some of those critical technologies or mechanisms or approaches where we get away from the perimeter defense that doesn't work, and we're truly focused on a risk and prioritization approach of what we have to be able to do. I am looking at end-to-end biometric, right, capabilities and technologies, so that if you're my banker, right, and I'm at the other end, that we can truly do that handshake online, and I know I'm communicating with you and you with I. Opt-in programs for identity chips, ability to do Bitcoin transactions in a safe, right, regulated manner. I think we need to be exploring all those next generation technologies and approaches before we lose trust.
When you think about the way we exchange emails, I am frightened by what people put into attachments of an email.
Exactly.
But why do we do that? Because 99.9% of times it works.
Right.
Security is not breached.
Right.
And you're right, if that trust is broken, then
Yes.
the very essence of our economy will be broken. Eric
Yes.
Weinhocker did a beautiful book called The Origin of Wealth.
Mm-hmm.
And in that he mapped the Pew Index of Trust against GDP per capita. And you could see those economies that had low trust had low GDP per capita, and those that had high trust had high GDP per capita. And so I
Right.
think that we really need to be very conscious that the last decade,
Right.
we've taken a lot of friction
Yes.
out of our economy. Things that you can do in seconds
Mm-hmm.
that used to take weeks.
Right. So that's why I often advise mid-sized and small businesses that don't have a lot of resources to spend in this space. If email and document transfer to their customers or clients is foundational to their company, they need a high level of trust. Just put in place a technology that does that, right? I don't want people to feel that I'm overwhelmed by all of this and I can't do everything, so I'm going to do nothing. That's why focusing on those critical transactions that you have to do and putting in place encrypted and encrypted technologies today can move with ease and are easy to implement. And so this isn't a barrier, right? This is ability for you to maintain trust in your key business processes.
And so they need to think like the banks did 20 years ago. If it's cheaper to pay for that breach than to protect it,
Right.
then that's what they should
Right.
do.
Right.
But when the cost of those breaches escalate, or the importance of the
Right.
breaches escalate, they then need to take an alternative course.
So we have a recent statistic in the United States that 60% of all small businesses that have a major breach are out of business within a few months.
What type of things
Right.
would cause you not to do something, and what are the sort of things
Oh.
that you can do?
So easy. I have a whole series of things that we use with my company that I call the basics. Okay, one of them is email protection, and there are so many cloud-based software as a service capabilities today that can protect your email. Because think about it: if you lose 2 months of your email, what do? The other thing is just backup. A lot of companies I talk to don't do basic backups, right, onto their hard drives. For instance, on my laptop, I just have a $100 backup hard drive. And guess what? When I'm not using it, it's disconnected, it's in my desk. So if anything happens to my platform, I have a complete backup. So basic things can make a huge amount of difference. Website protection. So many great companies out there today that provide website protection so that they actually have lightweight sensors on your website, and then if they detect anything abnormal, they let you know right away and you can take action. If your website's down for 48 hours, sometimes that could be a killer to certain kinds of companies. So again, focusing and putting those very finite technologies and services in place. What I often tell directors, and this really isn't that complex, it's get an assessment, right, of your risk baseline today, because that will help you, right, prioritize what's most critical to you and is impacted by the online environment. After that, you should have a sense of how much you could lose if you were to have a major breach. And then that can help you figure out your return on investment of how much you can put into cybersecurity and cyber intelligence, right? And you can explain to your board, hey, these were my risks, and therefore I think this is a fair level of investment. And then go to professionals, right, who can come in. You know, you're not going to put the whole thing in place yourself. So go to professionals, you know, go shop around, see where your price point is and what you can afford, and then put that protection as a service in place for your company.
Terry, I'd connect that to the strategic planning process. You know,
Absolutely.
as you look at in your strategic plan, we have a number of clear directions we want to follow. In each of those, there will be, with each option, there will be trade-offs. And we're used to saying, well, okay, this is a wonderful strategy, but can we afford it? That question has to go to cybersecurity.
Right.
So that you're using the assessment, the appetite for innovation, the appetite for risk, and then we're actually framing that strategic plan in terms of how is this risk going to permeate in our business. And I think that's the critical lens you've got to look at. How does this risk relate to the way in which we're executing on our strategy?
It's all about your business.
Yeah.
It's not about doing cybersecurity.
Yeah.
It's about protecting you against crime and fraud.
Yeah. Because I think that when you look at the way the banks have responded, 15 years ago, it was much cheaper for the banks to write a check when someone successfully defrauded their customers.
Right.
Much cheaper. It's not.
It's
no longer.
not.
Today, should we be worried about building strong borders?
Right.
Or should we recognise they're going to be penetrated and build strong internal defences?
So as a national security professional, I always assume the bad guys are in. And I've had a lot of experience over the past 20 years, both in government and industry and academia, and have found that they are inside your networks or they have access to your networks. So this issue of I'm going to build a wall, okay, is absurd in this day and age. Not to mention the insider risk. Criminals, right, can also be within your workforce or have access to someone in your workforce. So that's why that whole approach is really dead. Resilience is baking assurance into your business processes, right? Duplication, backups, trust in your key transactions, encryption regarding your key transactions. Therefore, if they're in, they won't get everything, right? With one of the things we learned from the Sony breach was once they got into the network, think about this, they could actually get access to their unreleased movies, okay? I always tell customers, what are the jewels of your business? Mm-hmm. And for Sony, it was their unreleased movies. And yet, once they were in, they were in and were accessible to everything. The CEO communications, a whole nother issue, just basic email security, right, wasn't in place. So, that is the way you need to think about it is, as you buy infrastructure, ask about its assurance. As you put in software programs, ask about resilience and assurance.
So when you're talking about operating inside the network and being able to deal and compromise people inside the company, are we really talking about a cultural issue as well as a technology one?
No, I honestly believe that through the ages we've seen, if an individual who has a crisis in their life and needs money, they don't even have to be a bad person, or if they can be co-opted by a criminal for some reason or other, that's obviously the best avenue, right? Leveraging someone within the organization is the easiest way to gain access. So one thing that a lot of businesses in the States do is you don't allow everyone to have the same kinds of accesses. And again, there's some great technologies today that allow you to put that in place so that we call it attribute-based access, where you actually profile what is the work you do, and then they are given access to only certain things within the company, certain data sets, right?
Some of my fellow company directors govern sport, and you raised the issue of corruption in sport, particularly sports betting, and the way that these bad people get control of key sportsmen is that they do something that is just slightly on the edge.
Right.
And they get away with it.
They're blackmailing them.
And, do that 2 or 3 times and suddenly they then ask them to do something and they say, I'm not going to do that. That's outrageous. And they say, well, we will tell everybody about what you've already done.
Right.
And that pattern goes to culture.
Yes. And there are actually some very easy policy kinds of protocols that you can put in place to mitigate insider risk and insider access as well. But I think the bottom line is you want to be able to operate through a hack or through a ransom event. you need your business revenue and reputation not to be brought to its knees as a result of that event. And that means resilience at all levels. And I think a final thought that I would have is, and someone needs to be responsible within the company for physical personnel and cyber security and resilience, right, for your business. One-stop shopping.
Terry, that was lovely. Thank you very much.
Russell, anytime. Next time, come to DC and we'll have a chat there.
You're on.
Okay.